and welcome to MVP Hot Seat with Ibrahim Ababou. Today, we are pleased to have with us Mr. Colin Namalambo, a distinguished board member of the Namibia Atomic Energy Board. Namibia stands at a pivotal juncture in exploring nuclear energy to diversify its energy portfolio and bolster economic growth. The Atomic Energy Board plays a crucial role in guiding the nation's nuclear ambitions, ensuring that any developments align with international safety standards and contribute positively to Namibia's sustainable development. Today, I'm excited to delve into Namibia's nuclear energy strategy and explore how it might shape the future of energy mix. Thank you for joining us, Colin.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim.
And thank you.
Nice to be with you. Thank you very much.
Our pleasure. My first question, could you provide an overview of the current status of Namibia's nuclear energy strategy and how you envision its role in the country's future energy mix?
Ibrahim, thank you very much, and it's always good to talk to you. With regard to Namibia, I think Namibia reached an important milestone when our cabinet in 2014, in principle, agreed for us to have the nuclear fuel cycle policy and a policy that relates to nuclear science and technology. The nuclear science, the nuclear fuel cycle policy really informs how Namibia wants to add value to our uranium cycle and how we want to do it from mining, particularly into waste, and for particularly moving forward to more looking at issues that pertains to value addition and beneficiation. The nuclear science and technology policy, on the other hand, informs us as to where to deal with issues that relates particularly in the health sector, agriculture, and basically also in water management. So those are two policies that are very much distinct, and this is what the board now has to make sure that we implement those two policies simultaneously. So where are we now? The policies I said to you was agreed in principle by cabinet in 2014. So the board, particularly now, is to make sure that how Namibia then implements those two policies. Last year in 2024, the board organized a nuclear science and technology policy, and we had invited quite a number of both local and international and regional players to come to Namibia to discuss how we would then implement and work closely with the board to make sure that Namibia begins to implement some of those ideas that emanates from those two policies.
That's fantastic to hear. And to follow up on this, what are the primary challenges faced in licensing regulatory process for nuclear power projects in Namibia or nuclear projects in Namibia? And how is the board addressing these challenges?
The board, maybe let me just try to explain two things, and then we'll come to the issues that pertain to licensing. Mm-hmm. Currently, the board serves as an advisory board to the government, particularly looking on issues on radiation and on nuclear energy matters. The board then advises the minister, who's responsible for the administrative of the act, particularly and other organs of the state, on issues that relates to radiation sources and nuclear materials, including to advise on radiation protection, radiation sources, radioactive materials, radioactive waste. All these things are prescribed in our policies. Now, that is the function of the board. Now, there is now what we have, the National Radiation Protection Authority, which is then tasked with the issues that relates to the issues of licensing. But I think we need to be also very, very, very clear. Namibia has a very long history since the early 60s in the mining sectors, particularly on uranium. Currently, we are the third largest producer of uranium. It's not a position that we want to be, though, but we want to be a position where our uranium is really being processed here on the continent, and particularly to play that vital role, particularly looking at what Namibia can offer to the world, and in particular to Africa. Now, with regard to licensing, all the issues that pertains to the licensings are dealt with by the National Radiation Protection Authority. We, the board, review aspects that relates to companies who want to come into Namibia and to help us develop this very important resource, which we think can play a very pivotal role on the continent. So we look at these contracts that we get or see from other countries or from companies. On that basis, we refer them to the authorities for them to review. Now, let me just give you a bit of a context, particularly under the currently under review. During the authority granted about 22 licenses for import and export of radioactive sources. 123 particularly looking at the storage, 6 on transport of radiation, radioactive, and nuclear material. So I don't really think it's a question of really the issue that pertains to licensing, but we want to deal with responsible partners, particularly looking at 3 aspects on safety, security, and safeguards, because we want to be a responsible country in view that we are also a state, a nation that is a member state to the IEA, the NPT, the Treaty of Pelindaba, the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, and we have signed up to a number of international agreements that make sure that all these things are inconsistent. Basically, looking at many aspects. It's the protection to the people and the environment.
I see, and it is important to clarify that. Thank you very much. Also, we know that stakeholder engagement is very important. So how are you engaging with the local communities and stakeholders to address concern about building public trust in safety and benefits of nuclear energy?
Ibrahim, thank you for asking this question. I think the first thing that comes to people's mind when you talk about nuclear, people look at it much more on nuclear bombs, but it's up for us really to explain how nuclear science and technology can play a very pivotal role in the socioeconomic development of any nation. It's really a pity when you look at Africa currently with so much abundant resources, but still we are having crises pertaining to energy to light up the continent for industrialization. That is one of the key challenges. For other countries, is an issue, and I can speak on particularly with regard to Namibia. We have a high rate of cancer in this country. Particularly, our current statistics indicates that 6 out of 10 people with cancer, probably it's fatality. Now, our role in particular is to really to engage the local communities on the benefits that relates to nuclear science and technology, and we have done so, and we continue to do so. Most of the uranium activities in Namibia are conducted in the western part of Namibia, the coastline of Namibia. So there is an issue where in fact, there is an organization that is run at the coast, particularly that deals in terms of a stakeholder engagement between the mining sector and the local communities, particularly to really explain to this community issues that relates to radioactive sources and other issues that pertains to uranium mining. But our engagement as well extend way beyond by explaining what are these benefits to the country, what are these benefits that relates also just simply in changing the lives of people. We started a program last year, of which the board is currently engaging. It's youth in nuclear in Namibia, particularly bringing the nuclear aspect to young children, particularly at the secondary level, to engage them. This program is still ongoing. We want to take it to another level, particularly as well, and we are currently in the process of engaging the local authority, the government, to see whether we can include nuclear science and technology in the curriculum, the school curriculum in Namibia. So these are part of many other activities that we are engaging. So we want the program started last year. Of course, we want to have this as a national program. So these are all steps into the right direction. The other key element, which I also need to perhaps indicate, that the Atomic Energy Board, of course, some of these decisions were taken in 2014. Now, we were in the process of really explaining this process to our head of our politicians, particularly some of whom have very limited knowledge into this aspect, and to explain to them. Of course, it's one thing to have the experts, but you must have the political will for you to be able to implement what you need to implement. So if there's no political will, then you are stuck simply because you have a bunch of few technocrats who probably understand the technology far better, but without the necessary political will, will not be able to do so. I think for Namibia now, I think it's a good sign that at least the technology has been embraced at the highest level of government. And seen during the past statements that have been made by our incoming president, some of these discussions, particularly in a statement, she has always referred to nuclear science and technology, nuclear energy, and we now need to make sure that we need to take ownership of our resources, particularly uranium. You would also remember that a number of African countries are embarking on nuclear energy. The issue is, what role can Namibia play, particularly on the African continent, to make sure that these countries, as they embark on nuclear, that they can rely on Namibia and other countries on the African continent, particularly with regard to supply. We are also engaging, as I said to you, that as it is now, we mine and then the issue goes to milling. We need to go beyond just the mining and the milling, to go on a full cycle that begin to address the key challenges that pertains to Africa. And these challenges are well articulated in the African Agenda 2063. So Namibia has a special responsibility. We want to play that responsibility. We want to play that responsibility with our partners on the continent, particularly to see whether we could really engage them to see on a regional basis, and to make sure that at least the priorities needs to be given for Africa, Namibia playing that pivotal role.
I totally agree with all the points you mentioned, and especially the last one you mentioned about Namibia playing a role with other countries in Africa, because as you mentioned, many African countries are exploring and taking the decision to go for nuclear energy. So why not benefiting from their brothers in the continent instead of looking abroad? So that's a very crucial point. And also you mentioned something very important at the beginning, is that the majority of people, when they hear nuclear, they associate it directly to nuclear bombs. And it is a great initiative that you have put a program in the curriculum to teach young people about nuclear, to avoid having that fear ingrained in them of nuclear bombs, because it's totally different thing, but people always associate it to nuclear. Yes, that's fantastic, great developments. My last question is also in relation to what you just mentioned. So how is Namibia collaborating with international nuclear partners and neighboring countries to advance nuclear energy initiative, and what role this partnership play in the development of the sector?
Thank you very much. We have signed a lot of agreements. I think partly because our agreements, I think we need to give priority to Africa. We have signed an agreement with South Africa. We intend to work with other countries on the African continent, particularly in the space of nuclear science and technology. What is said, by the way, and I had a privilege to attend many of the IEA general conferences. We meet at the general conferences and we have these kind of meetings, how we need to collaborate, but everybody comes back and then it's forgotten and then we wait for another general conference for us to meet. I think that needs to go away. What we now need to do is to really shape and have a clear understanding among us as on the African continent. What is it that we want? South Africa and very other few countries, I mean, Morocco, Egypt, Algeria, Ghana, has really advanced. We now hear that countries such as Rwanda and Uganda also are shaping up. My view, and when you look at some of these things, is that many of these countries have agreements with other countries from outside the continent. Why can we not come as Africans, first and foremost, deal with the problems that pertains to the African problem, and then for us to see how we can collaborate? Yes, to an extent, I can confirm to you that we have a series of discussion with South Africa, our neighbor, who is a very advanced in nuclear industry. We've identified priority areas that we would want to engage. I think at this point in time, those agreements just needs now the final touches before they are signed at the minister level. Having said that, we're also collaborating with other countries, particularly Rosatom, Russia. We have collaboration with the Chinese. We are now having discussions with the companies in the United States, some of whom have expressed an interest in the nuclear industry in Namibia, particularly looking at our advanced uranium resource. So we want to be in a situation where there must be a clear win-win situation. That is number one. Number two, there must be an aspect of beneficiation. Number three, we must have practical solution looking. For instance, Namibia is a very drought-stricken country. We know that we can use nuclear science and technology, particularly to deal in the issue of agriculture, particularly with regard to drought-resistant crops. Issues of food irradiation, particularly looking how we could support farmers to make sure that their products do not perish. Issues that relates to water, particularly with regarding desalination. Yes, we are open to work with everybody, but as I said to you, our preference would be to work with our brothers and sisters on the continent. There is so much talent on this continent. There is, and I think also the other thing that we now need to do as well, how do we engage the financial sectors, particularly the banks, to really see that, yes, it's something they need to look at, in particular to finance. I'm always somehow not, when people talk about foreign investment, but I says, but what about local investment?
Exactly.
Can you not mobilize local investment first and foremost, and to see whether, yes, we can mobilize local investment to make sure that at least some of this money through that it's here. We have an abundant capacity across the continent with people with the knowledge, but people continue to leave this continent simply because there are not opportunities. We need to create and present these opportunities for our for Africans to realize that the future is Africa. And only then can we create these industries where they can play a very pivotal role in implementing some of these ideas that we have. I think it's way time that we move away from ideas into practicality in terms of implementation. So in short, yes, we do have cooperation. I think during our last conference on nuclear science and technology, we had very good discussion with countries such as Niger. Niger is a very important country with a lot of uranium. On the sideline, we had some very good discussions with them. We had very good discussions with South Africa. We want to have other discussions, particularly with other African countries, Ghana as well, Nigeria as well, Morocco, Egypt, and all these countries. We are willing to listen and to see how we can best engage.
Exactly, and that's a fantastic closing remark, because the priority should be in Africa and should be within African countries first before we check elsewhere. And as you mentioned, something very important is that the African continent is the continent of the future. So we just need to let everyone believe in it, because we are from 2050, 2100. So that would be the most the fantastic continent, I hope, in the world, because we have great talents in the continent. In the past, they have been going elsewhere to other continents to thrive. So now we need them to stay in the continent and thrive here, and make it not a dream but a reality. Thank you very much, Colin, for sharing such a comprehensive overview of Namibia's strategy and multifaceted approach of the Namibia Atomic Energy Board. Your insights into the challenges and collaborative efforts are truly enlightening. As we conclude, I reflect on the promising yet challenging road ahead of Namibia's nuclear energy sector. Namibia is taking deliberate steps to harnessing nuclear power for a secure and sustainable energy future. I appreciate your time and thoughtful insight today, and I look forward to seeing the continued progress and positive impact of your work on the national energy landscape and the science and technology also. In conclusion, I'm also excited to mention the upcoming Africa Nuclear Business Platform 2025 in Morocco this April, which is bringing together key stakeholders from across the continent to discuss nuclear energy future in Africa. This platform will provide unique opportunity to showcase the progress of African nations, including Namibia, and further explore how collaborative effort can drive Africa's nuclear future. As you mentioned, we lack platforms that bring together Africans. The only main event is the IEA General Conference, but we need much more to have constant collaboration within us. So thank you once again, Colin.
Ibrahim, thank you very much. We shouldn't meet in Vienna to discuss our problems there. We need to discuss them here on this continent. Thank you very much.
Exactly. Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you very soon. And for our viewers, stay tuned for next episode of MVP Hot Seat. Thank you very much, Colin.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.